Garis snorted disdainfully as he observed the primitive human structures below from his drop ship, envisioning the display of their skulls on pikes as trophies after effortlessly quelling their feeble resistance. The Cathari Empire had conquered 100 worlds, and these humans would be no exception. Garis, a battle-hardened Katari warrior with numerous planetary invasions under his belt, found the humans laughably primitive. Their rudimentary space travel and lack of energy weapons made them as insignificant as insects. Descending through the clouds toward the human colony, Garis noted their makeshift defenses and sensed their fear. His razor-sharp claws twitched with anticipation, but soon he would realize he had severely underestimated the humans. They fought with a ferocity and determination unprecedented in his experience. The human skulls Garis planned to mount on pikes might remain a distant dream unless he adjusted his strategy. Suddenly, Garis's eyes snapped open. Confusion enveloped him as he tried to piece together his surroundings. His last memory was being surrounded by human soldiers, bleeding from numerous wounds. By all accounts, he should be dead. Instead, he found himself on a simple cot in a Spartan room with metallic walls. His injuries had been tended to, and he winced as he sat up, feeling the pain in his side. The door slid open, revealing a human in military attire adorned with captain's insignia. "I'm Captain James Carter," the man announced. "I'm in charge here." Garis narrowed his eyes. "I am Garis, commander of the Cathari invasion force. Why am I not dead?" "We don't kill prisoners," Carter replied calmly. "Your wounds have been treated, and you'll be provided with food and water." Garis scoffed. "And then what? Will you keep me as a pet?"
No, Carter asserted.
"I'm here to negotiate a peaceful resolution to this conflict." Garis laughed incredulously. "Peaceful? You humans are even more naive than I thought. There can be no peace between us, only conquest." Carter remained composed. "I understand that's the Cathari way, but it doesn't have to be. War and violence aren't the only options." "What other option is there?" Garis growled. "You fight until the strongest prevails. That is the natural order of things. Now release me so I can rejoin the battle and crush your feeble resistance." "I'm afraid I can't do that," Carter replied calmly. "But I want you to listen to me." He leaned forward, resting his elbows on his knees. "Humanity's history is rife with conflict. We've engaged in countless wars, battling over resources, ideologies, and petty differences. But from those mistakes, we've gleaned valuable lessons. We've come to understand that violence only breeds more violence, and that there's always an alternative." Grantis rolled his eyes at Carter's words. "Pretty words from a weak species. Is it weakness to show mercy?" Carter countered. "To choose a higher path? You say that humans are naive, but I think it's the Cathari who are limited in their thinking," Carter continued. "You assume that seeking peace makes us incapable of war. But you're wrong. We are more than capable of defending ourselves, as you've seen. The difference is we don't revel in conquest and slaughter. We fight only when necessary, always seeking another solution." For a moment, the Cathari was silent, pondering the human's words. He had never encountered a species like this before, one with a history of war yet still capable of showing mercy to their enemies. It was an intriguing concept, challenging everything he had been taught. "Fine," Garis conceded at last. "I will hear your proposal, human. But do not expect me to agree to anything that goes against the Cathari way." Carter nodded, a hint of a smile on his face. "I wouldn't expect anything less, Commander. Now, let's discuss how we can end this conflict without further bloodshed." Meanwhile, light years away from the tense negotiations between Garis and Captain Carter, the full might of the Cathari Empire descended upon the unsuspecting colony of Nexa Prime. 1,000 drop ships, each carrying a dozen battle-hungry Cathari warriors, pierced the planet's atmosphere, their hulls glowing red-hot from friction. The invasion had begun. On the surface, the human colonists scrambled to prepare their defenses. They were farmers, engineers, and scientists, not soldiers, but they knew they had to fight for their homes and their lives. A small unit of Earth's military, sent to protect the fledgling colony, rallied the civilians and distributed weapons. Lieutenant Sarah Briggs hastily assembled militia. "Remember your training. Stay in cover, conserve your ammo, and work together. We can beat these bastards, but we have to be smart about it." The colonists nodded grimly, checking their rifles and taking up positions in makeshift barricades. They could hear the roar of the Cathari drop ships growing louder, see the alien vessels descending like a swarm of locusts. "Here they come," someone muttered, voices tight with fear. The Katari ships landed with earth-shaking thuds, ramps slamming down to disgorge streams of heavily armed warriors. They roared their battle cries, brandishing pulse rifles and vibra blades, their eyes gleaming with bloodlust. "Fire!" Lieutenant Briggs yelled, and the human defenses erupted with muzzle flashes and the staccato crack of gunfire. Bullets pinged off Katari armor, but here and there, a lucky shot found its mark, felling an alien. For every Katari that fell, however, a dozen more charged forward. They returned fire with their pulse rifles, searing beams of energy cutting through human barricades like a blowtorch through paper. Screams filled the air as colonists fell, their chests smoldering. Yet the humans fought on with grim determination, retreating into the maze-like alleyways of the colony. Snipers took up positions on rooftops, picking off alien officers, while improvised explosives were detonated under the feet of advancing Katari squads. In the orbital battle above, the Katari fleet wreaked devastation on the planet, their energy weapons reducing entire city blocks to molten slag. But the humans had a surprise in store. In a hidden bunker, a team of hackers worked frantically to infiltrate the Katari battle net. Suddenly, the aliens' communication channels were flooded with screeching static and contradictory orders, sowing confusion and chaos among the invaders. On the ground, the tide was slowly turning. Despite their advanced technology and warrior ethos, the Katari were ill-prepared for the dirty, unconventional warfare tactics employed by the humans. They were accustomed to swift, overwhelming victories, not the prolonged, grueling struggle where the enemy refused to engage them head-on. "Keep pushing," urged Lieutenant Briggs to her exhausted troops. "We're wearing them down. We can win this." But the battle was far from over. Wave after wave of fresh Katari troops poured from their ships, while in orbit, their fleet regrouped for a second, even more devastating assault. The fate of Nexa Prime hung in the balance, and the courage and resourcefulness of its human defenders would face the ultimate test. Inside the holding cell, the metal walls seemed to close in on Garis as he sat across from Captain Carter, the human's words echoing in his mind. Carter spoke of Earth, of the wars and conflicts that had nearly torn their world apart, and the hard lessons they had learned from those dark times. "We realize that our strength comes from our diversity," Carter said, his eyes distant as if glimpsing into the past. "When we work together despite our differences, we can achieve incredible things. It's not about conquest or domination, but about cooperation and understanding." Garis listened, his brow furrowed. The concept was alien to him, but he couldn't deny the evidence before his eyes. These humans, with their inferior technology and fragile bodies, had managed to repel the Katari invasion force. They had adapted to the battlefield, using clever tactics and unconventional strategies to overcome their disadvantages. "Your warriors fight with great skill and courage," Garis admitted grudgingly. "But how do you maintain unity among such a diverse population? Do you not have conflicts between your different factions?" Carter smiled. "Of course we do, but we've learned to resolve those conflicts through diplomacy and compromise, not violence. We recognize that our differences make us stronger, not weaker." Garis fell silent, considering the captain's words. He thought of the Katari way, the endless cycle of conquest and subjugation. For generations, his people had believed that strength was the only thing that mattered, that the weak existed only to serve the strong. But now, faced with human resilience and adaptability, he began to question that belief. The distant echoes of explosions and gunfire seeped through the walls, a grim reminder of the battle raging beyond. Bantis understood that his people were enduring heavy losses, that the humans fought with an unprecedented ferocity and determination, qualities the Katari had never before encountered. "Your people will never surrender," Garis asserted, locking eyes with Carter. "They will fight to the last warrior, even in the face of certain defeat." Carter nodded solemnly. "We don't seek conflict, but we will defend our homes and way of life at any cost." Garis paced the confines of the small cell, contemplating the Cathari's history of conquest and the endless cycle of violence it had perpetuated. "For what glory? Power?" he muttered to himself. "In the end, it only brings more enemies, more worlds to conquer, and more destruction." Turning to Carter, Garis made his decision. "I will help you," he declared, the words feeling unfamiliar on his tongue. "I will speak to my people, convince them to end this war. There has been enough bloodshed on both sides." Carter stood, extending his hand in gratitude. "Thank you, Garis. I know this isn't an easy choice for you, but together, We can find a peaceful resolution to this conflict. Garis hesitated before clasping Carter's hand, a gesture of trust and respect that contradicted his Cathari upbringing. As he looked into Carter's eyes, he saw strength, the strength of a people united in their diversity, fighting for a common cause. "We will have peace," Garis affirmed, his voice resolute. "But it will not be easy. My people will resist. They will not understand at first. But I will make them see the truth, as you have shown me." Carter nodded, a glimmer of hope shining in his eyes. "It's a start," he acknowledged. "A small step on a long road. But every journey begins with a single step." Together, the human and the Cathari exited the cell, ready to confront the challenges ahead. The war still raged, but now, there was a glimmer of hope for a different outcome, one of peace, understanding, and coexistence. Garis stood before the vid screen, his heart racing as he awaited the connection to be established. Captain Carter stood beside him, a reassuring presence in the face of the monumental task ahead. The screen flickered to life, revealing the imposing figure of Emperor Valthor, his scarred face twisted into a scowl. "I thought you were dead or captured by the humans. What is the meaning of this?" he growled, his voice dripping with contempt. Garis took a deep breath, steeling himself. "Your Majesty, I come to you with a proposal for peace. The humans have shown me that there is another way, a path beyond endless conquest and bloodshed." The Emperor's eyes narrowed. "You dare speak of peace, you who have led our warriors into battle countless times? What has happened to you, Garis?" "I have seen the strength of the humans," Garis replied, his voice steady. "Not just in battle, but in their unity, their ability to work together despite their differences. They have taught me that there is more to life than war and domination." Valthor scoffed. "The humans are weak, their ideals are foolish. They will fall before the might of the Cathari, as all others have." Captain Carter stepped forward respectfully. "Your Majesty, the humans have proven themselves to be formidable adversaries. Your forces have suffered heavy losses, and the battle is far from over. Is it not better to seek a peaceful resolution rather than continue this costly war?" The Emperor's gaze shifted to Carter, his expression unreadable. "And what would the humans offer in return for peace? What concessions would you demand?" "We seek only to coexist in harmony," Carter replied, "to share our knowledge and resources, to learn from each other. We do not desire your territory or your subjugation, only an end to the fighting." Valthor was silent for a long moment, his brow furrowed in thought. Then slowly he nodded. "Very well, I will consider your proposal. But know this, humans, if you betray us, if this is some trick, I will not hesitate to unleash the full might of the Cathari upon you." The screen went dark, and Garis let out a breath he hadn't realized he'd been holding. "That went better than I expected," he said, turning to Carter. "But the real challenge lies ahead. The negotiations will not be easy." Carter clasped Garis's shoulder. "We'll face it together, my friend, and we'll show both our peoples that there is a better way." The peace talks were held on a neutral planet, a small uninhabited world orbiting a distant star. The human delegation arrived first, setting up a makeshift conference room in the ruins of an ancient civilization long since past. Garis paced nervously as they waited for the Cathari representatives to arrive. He had faced down armies, stared death in the face countless times, but this was a different kind of battle, one fought with words and ideas, not blades and blasters. At last, the Cathari ship landed, and the delegation emerged. At their head was Emperor Galar himself, flanked by his most trusted advisors. Garis and Carter stepped forward to greet them. "Welcome," Carter said, extending his hand in the human gesture of goodwill. "Thank you for agreeing to these talks." Valthor ignored the outstretched hand, his eyes fixed on Garis. "I'm here for the sake of our people," he said, his voice cold. "But I have not forgotten your betrayal, Garis. You will have to work hard to regain my trust." Garis bowed his head. "I understand, Your Majesty. I only seek what is best for the Cathari, as I always have." The negotiations were lengthy and tense, with both sides struggling to find common ground. The humans offered to share their advanced medical technology, while the Cathari demanded access to the mineral-rich asteroids in human-controlled space. Tempers flared, voices were raised, but through it all, Bantes and Carter worked tirelessly to keep the talks on track. They argued and debated, always with the goal of peace in mind. Finally, after days of intense discussions, an agreement was reached. The Cathari Empire would recognize the sovereignty of human territories, while the humans would provide aid and resources to help the Katari rebuild their society. Trade routes would be established, and cultural exchange programs put in place to foster understanding between the two species. As the talks concluded and the delegations prepared to depart, Bantes found himself reflecting on the incredible journey that had brought him to this moment. He thought of the battles he had fought, the worlds he had conquered, and the lives he had taken. He also pondered the lessons he had learned from the humans, of the power of unity and the strength that came from diversity. "Thank you," he said to Carter, clasping the human's hand in his own. "Thank you for showing me a different path, for helping me see that there is more to life than war." Carter smiled. "Thank you for being open to change, my friend. Together, we have taken the first step towards a brighter future for both our peoples." As Garis boarded the Katari ship, he knew that the road ahead would not be easy. Change never was. But he also knew that he had found a new purpose, a new way to serve his people. With the help of his human allies, he would work to build a Katari society based on the principles of cooperation and understanding, one that could stand alongside the humans as equals and partners in the vast, wondrous galaxy they shared.